Hey everyone. Happy Sunday. How's everyone doing? Hold on, let me switch over the screen as well. Oh, there's like a bunch of stuff on my screen. Go away. Actually. Yeah, this is better. There we go. How is everyone doing today? I'm just gonna go and collect the questions for today. Had a little workout. Oh, yeah. Nice. So what kind of workout are we talking about? Exhausted but good. Yeah, I need to get back into workouts. Need to get a little bit more movement apart from like all the walks we're doing. All right, let's have a look at the questions. Dun, dun. It's a nice kind of exhaustion though, right? When you just get to like the after workout session. And it's like that. I don't know, like I keep saying this, right? Like there's two types of exhausted. You have the mental exhaustion and like the physical exhaustion, where the physical exhaustion is usually super nice if you have to do work afterwards. Like if you have to do like 3D work, right? I don't know. It will always make me feel like in a state of bliss or something. Full body weight workout. Oh yeah. Doing good. Did some early side quest farming in Cyberpunk this morning. Farming? Just going from side quest to side quest, basically. The side quests are pretty good, apart from like the open world ones that like pop up randomly. They still have some good features to them. Like for example, well, specifically talking about the open world ones, right? Where you have like a shootout between people. I never realized that once the shootout happens, and say you happen to intervene or not, like once it's over, that will turn into like a police crime scene. I never realized that, which is actually pretty cool. Yeah, the side quests with like some of the characters are really good in that game. Okay. They are so good. 20 questline is the best. I'm thinking about if I finished that one. I didn't finish that one. I think I had an issue on one of the quest lines which didn't allow me to continue. I need to give it a try because there were like a couple of quest lines like that. Oh my god, my face is getting blown out by the window. Let's see. Let's not make it worse. That's a little bit better. Best quest line in the game? I like the Judy Alvarez quest line. What other quest line? I really liked the oh god damn it, what is that character called again? It's a little bit hard because I had an issue in like the quest line again where I couldn't finish it. It's the one where you go and hunt down like a. It's like a serial killer that basically turns people into. Well, I'm not gonna say. I don't want to spoil it, but. Yeah, the quests are so good. So good. I wonder when the first DLC is coming out. Let's have a look. Do we have any anonymous questions this week? Okay, we have one interesting anonymous question. The happy to get a quest. Is that the one with Judy then? I think at the end I was so curious about like different endings and all that stuff that I just looked through them. Well, through some of them, because sometimes I don't know. There's like sometimes I want to play them, but then sometimes I also want to just oh, with the friend of the police, yeah. Oh man, this is the thing, right? Like, whenever I think about all this stuff, like all this good shit happening in Cyberpunk, it always makes me so sad that it didn't get the proper dev time. Like, it could have been such a, I mean, it is a good game, but it could have been so much more. Oh, it makes me so sad. Damn it. I just, yeah, I hope that they can patch it up, right? And make it to what they initially intended, but it's always going to be different. It's always going to be different if it's patched up later compared to just like first release and everything's good already. Oh well. All right. Cool. I think it's time to dive into some questions. That's why I'm holding out to play it. Yeah. I mean, man, it's such a tricky one, right? Because it's probably the best game that I've played in like recent years. And I have like honestly, I have troubles recommending it to other people. Because there's so many factors that come into it. Like how prone to bugs are you? Or like how prone to being ticked off by bugs, right? Because my what is it? Like my tolerance for bugs is pretty high. So I can deal with like a lot of stuff without it breaking my belief into the game or like my immersion. But for some other people, if they run into issues that you see almost constantly in Cyberpunk, they might be like, what the hell is this? Sometimes it feels like a tech demo. Yeah, I mean, man, it just nails all the aspects that they wanted to show off. Like everything that's there. Like imagine if they had more dev time. Ah, would have been so good. It probably would have been the game that really pushed the open world genre into like a new direction, which I think we need at the moment. But I don't think it was good enough. Like I think we're gonna learn our lessons from it, and I think we're gonna try to replicate the stuff that they tried to do. But it could have been way more. But yeah, I agree. Sometimes it feels like a tech demo. There's also stuff that is just so, I don't know, so static, right? Like some of the, what is it? Like some of the open world encounters that you have with like the police, they feel so outdated compared to everything else that they tried to do. It feels like it was almost like an afterthought. Like, oh, the world doesn't feel like immersive enough, so let's just scatter these random events in. Where they could have done so much more with that too. Yeah, but still, I like the game. I really do. I also have the art book. I still need to look through that. Well, fully. I haven't fully explored that yet. Yeah. Yeah, it is. I wonder what the first DLC is going to be. And if it's going to pull me back into the game. I think they're going to be bug fixing for a while though. All right. So, let's dive into some questions, shall we? The first question is from Iwana, and she asked, could you talk a little bit about drawcalls, what they are and how to lower them? So, this is a good question, right? Because a lot of people just hear that term thrown around, like drawcalls. It's almost like this thing that everyone should know about, but it's never really discussed. It's also more of a tech topic, so I'm gonna look at it from like an artist perspective, right? So drawcalls are basically everything that gets passed to the GPU. Say it your assets that need to be rendered out, your materials that need to be rendered out, your material instances, like all those things, right? They contribute to the drawcall count. So that is like the basic understanding of it, right? So it's basically everything that gets passed through the GPU. Now, how do we lower them? That kind of depends on the limitations that you're working with, right? Because the most simple solution here, how to lower drawcalls, is just to remove assets. That is the most simple, like rudimentary solution. However, if that is not an option, if you only have the most necessary like assets in your scene, then we have to look at something else, like condensing the amount of materials that are on an asset. Because every material that we add onto an asset will also cause a new drawcall. So imagine if we have, I was looking at examples for like just like a polygon divided in two triangles, right? One has one material and the one next to that has two materials. That means that the one with two materials has 3 drawcalls, one for the asset and then two for the materials. And then the other one has 2 drawcalls, one for the asset and then one for the material. So usually there's like a bunch of smart ways that you can work around this, right? We briefly talked about this last week actually, where we were looking at the example that someone in our chat brought up of a skyscraper and how to make that look good from a distance. And what I mentioned there is that the last LOD, you could have that turned to like a swatch material or something. And this is also a way to just reduce drawcalls from a distance, because then you don't have to render all the individual materials or all the individual assets that might be on top of the building, right? If you just reduce it to simple swatch colors, it uses one material, the swatch material, and then one asset, which is just like the last LOD asset. Instead of, I mean, if you think about it, if you want to have like a skyscraper, you probably have a concrete material, you probably have a window material, maybe even even some opacity on that window material, right, is also like a big tricky thing. Because then you need to not only render that window, that first window, but also the second and the third that come behind it, potentially. So that is also just like a way, like one of the ways to reduce the draw calls. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at some simpler examples. This is where we go a little bit into tech territory, because, for example, this is also where we cross the line over into tech, where if you have one master material and material instances linked to that master material, there is some optimization that happens. But I have to be brutally honest that I don't know if they are still separate draw calls. What I'm assuming, this is an assumption, so if you want to read up upon it, I suggest you to do so. But what I think is happening is that you have one draw call per material instance, and then also one for the material, like the master material. So that if you have a bunch of let's say like my scene, right? Like the medieval scene that I'm working on has like a bunch of assets that are textured with the wooden kit material instance, but they use like a different mask input based on the material instances that I'm using, right? So there is some optimization that happens there, but still, I think, yeah, I'm honestly not too sure about that. I should read up upon that. Usually how this works in the games industry, this is exactly the reason why we have tech artists, right? Because we do all the artistic setup. Usually there are limitations to how many materials that you can use, how you need to optimize this going down the lot chain. So these are things that you already should be aware of as a material artist, as an environment artist, sorry. But it might be the case that, say you're building a big level and you have a lot of assets and a lot of materials in that level, that the tech artist is gonna come and have a chat with you at some point. Where they might say like, look, we're looking at the camera frustum, basically what is rendered in front of you as a player, and we're running into issues where there's just too much stuff that's being rendered on screen. And again, in this scenario, we can solve that with a couple of options, right? Probably the easiest option again is to remove some assets. Just tone down on the amount of assets that are being rendered. Maybe put some, like a second option could be put some big visual blockers into place, like bigger buildings that have occlusion masks. Sorry about that. That have occlusion masks, and basically what they do is everything that's behind that occlusion mask or like behind that building is not going to be rendered. So that's also a way that you can optimize things. So let's say if we have a city, like that is pretty, I think usually when people talk about a city, they're like really scared by the amount of assets that you need, right? But if you have bigger buildings with occlusion meshes in it that can cull stuff that's being rendered, it's really a really good way to optimize your stuff. That's why if you think about the Division really works in that way, where they had like big skyscrapers that basically occlude like the blocks that you don't see, right? It's not rendering that stuff because it's not on screen. So yeah, tons of options here. Those are some of the more common things. If you get into contact with like a tech artist and they're like, look, we need to do something about like the budget here, usually it's just toning down like the amount of assets. That's the simplest way. If you have a lot of modular pieces, for example, there's like a building kit for like all the buildings that you're using, and they all have like 60 materials on it. I'm just naming a number, right? It might be worth to look into condensing down that list. And instead of 16, maybe you can get it down to, I don't know, let's say 10. Which is already like a good optimization if you have like 500 instances of those buildings, right? Because then you're cutting out like a massive amount of draw calls. So yeah, like a lot that goes into this. Usually, from an industry perspective, us environment artists are aware of what we need to do, but it's not something that we're actively chasing down. So usually there comes a time where you sit down with a tech artist and have a chat about like, look, imagine if you're a part of setting the world or like building the world, like tech is going to be a part of that conversation anyway. So that if you pitch the idea of like, oh, I don't know, let's have a crazy space station that has that can look out to multiple other space stations, and it might be cool from an art perspective, but it also needs to run, right? And it needs to run smooth, because else no one's gonna play that game. So yeah, really good question, Joanna. Thank you so much. I should actually make like a weekly tip about that now. It's actually a pretty good idea. Bikes, by the way, congrats on becoming senior. Oh, thank you, Bikes. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was a little bit weird, like, because I was on a week of vacation, right? And then I came back and I got a meeting with the lead, and they basically said like, oh, yeah, you've been senior since the beginning of the month. So it was pretty interesting to hear that. This is also, by the way, a perfect segue into the next question. Thank you so much, Bikes. Because Angelo asked, like, this might be a bit early to discuss, but how does a senior tag change your set of responsibilities? Were there any things you were already doing before you got the senior role? Yeah, this is, again, really good question, Angelo. Thank you so much. So, firstly, how does a senior tag change your set of responsibilities? Honestly, it didn't change that much, because the thing that usually happens is you will already be doing the job before you get it, which is kind of weird, but it's also, I guess it's kind of a good way to show that you have all the skills and to show that you're capable of doing that job once they give you the title, right? I always have mixed feelings about that, honestly, because yeah, I mean, we're going into conscious territory, right? Like it's not conscious, but like dangerous territory, let's call it that. Where, let's say you're an intermediate artist and you're already doing like a senior role for 2 years. Like, let's say, like how, when do you think it's fair to jump over compared to the business, right? Because technically you're already doing the job of a senior anyway, for in most cases less pay. So I don't know, it gets a bit contentious. I don't want to really dive into that too much, especially since I just got the senior role, so I want to keep it on a positive for a second. But yeah, how does it change? Like, usually you get more responsibility within your role, right? So it's like more ownership for the stuff that you're doing. So instead of supporting a senior or supporting other people, you are going to be more of the decision maker, a little bit more. You're still, if we look at the overall environment, right? The stuff that you'll be doing, most of it will still be set by the art director, and then discussed with the lead a little bit, and then brought down to the seniors, right? Because in most cases, and this is a generalization, this differs from studio to studio, is that a senior is still the person that's on the front lines, where from like a lead or anything above that, they're a little bit more detached from the actual work that's happening on the floor. So that is also why usually you give it a lot of responsibility and ownership, well, as much as you can, to like the seniors, because they'll be building that world. And that's where the ownership comes from, right? You get to decide like how stuff is gonna look like actually in the engine, and how you're gonna build stuff up, and like how you're gonna work together with the level designers to make the space like really interesting, both for level design and the art side of things, so that you can both get to like a good, like a really fluid playing level that looks really awesome too. That's always the end goal, right? So yeah. Is there anything to add to that section of the question? I think that's the main thing. Sometimes what they do, and this is also in my case, is that you transition to having more managerial tasks as well. So for example, like managing and mentoring like a couple of people in the studio, that will become like a bigger part of my tasks going forward. So that's definitely also like a big responsibility, because it's both awesome, but also it can be a little bit intimidating, right? When you as a person control like a portion of the future of the people that you manage, it's you have to really dedicate your time to that too. Even sometimes, in some cases, even more so than doing the actual art yourself, right? So I really like that aspect. I've been doing it through the mentorships as well. I love helping people with that. There are also people that don't want to go that route, and they just want to focus on the art, which is totally fine, by the way. But they tend to go into like the principal or expert route rather than the lead art role. So after senior, it basically splits into two sections, where you have leads on the one side and then experts on the other side. So yeah, let's have a look. What is the second part of the question here? Were there any things that you were already been doing before you got the senior role? Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting one, right? Because nothing really changed in my responsibilities. The only concrete thing that changed is that I'm managing one more person now. This again depends from studio to studio, right? And I'm trying to be as transparent as I can here. But most of the things I was already doing before I was a senior anyway. And I was probably doing them for a long time too. Because there was definitely a shift to when I came in. And then in the first couple of months, this is something that I always have to do. Like, I always have to find my bearing, and I always need to... For me personally, it takes a long time to get used to studio culture, how people react, like getting to know different people, and then knowing how to react to different people when they say something, right? Like, it always takes myself like a really long time. But I feel now, well, since a while, I've been at a comfort level where I can just talk to people, and I don't really feel any stress or like any insecurities anymore. I think it's more like a confidence thing. So that really grew like over time. Which also meant that my responsibilities grew, right? And yeah, especially in like the first couple of months when I was really looking for that balance, it just took me a while to get properly sorted on that front. Yeah, honestly, most of the stuff I was already doing before I got the senior role anyway. Like it's not what you were to expect, right? Like normally what you would expect is that you get the role and then they onboard you and there's like a bunch of workshops for like onboarding you properly to like a senior role. But it's actually like a super gradual transition, at least in my case. Like there will be like a couple of workshops in the future. Especially because I personally requested some on becoming like a better leader and like a better manager. But yeah, other than that, not that much, honestly. Because it's like a gradual transition over time. It sounds like you're getting some boss/lead experience without your own entire business being on the line. So I would say that's really, really valuable. Yeah, I do think so too. And it's also just really valuable to be in a position where you can impact like people's future careers. Which again goes back to, it might be daunting for some people, but I really enjoy that aspect where I can potentially stand up for people and be like, hey, look, this person is doing this and this. Maybe we should think about like this and this position, right? Trying to generalize it a bit, but and I do have a bigger say in that, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, you're right. I think, yeah, without my own business being on the line, yeah, that's a very good point. I never really saw it in that way. I was always really interested in leadership and like management and all that kind of stuff. But that's an interesting viewpoint, and I agree. It's nice to be able to get that experience without anything being on the line. Well, other than your personal reputation, which can be a pretty daunting thing as well, right? Because that's something, right? Like I feel like now that I'm a senior, like it carries more weight, but you also need to, I don't know, you need to set a better example, right? Like, I mean, not a better example, but you're becoming an example figure in, especially the studio, maybe even on a wider aspect, the industry too. So, yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, also, if there are more questions about the seniority, please feel free to let me know. I would be happy to answer some of them. It's quite interesting that I did like a recent weekly tip about seniority levels inside the games industry, and then this happens. I honestly didn't know when I was making that tip. I think it's like a couple of weeks ago now. Let's have a look here. Yeah, I'm just thinking about like all the responsibilities, right? And especially the last part that I brought up, just like how it might perceive people thinking about you, either within or outside of the industry. Because this is sort of the weird thing, right? Like you climb the seniority ladders pretty quickly in the games industry compared to some other industries where if you want to be like a senior technician or whatever, that is probably not happening in your 20s, right? That's more something that's gonna happen in your 40s or maybe late 30s or something like that. So it's pretty interesting to look at it from that perspective too. Also, I'm just gonna put like a reminder here, right? Like if this is your first time coming to one of these chats and you have any questions about the games industry, how it is to work within the games industry, environment art, portfolio questions, I don't know, workflows, anything like that, feel free to just drop it in the chat and then we can go through them. Let's have a look, because we have one more question here. These are the Patreon questions, right? So people that are a part of the community, which you can also be a part of if you subscribe on Twitch. That is like a new thing that we added quite recently, so I don't think I mentioned that anywhere yet. I need to update that. But this is a question from Anonymous. And this is quite an interesting question. I don't think I've ever talked about this. How frowned upon is it to torrent programs like Maya, ZBrush, Substance, Photoshop, etc., as long as it's for educational purposes and not commercial use? Does it matter? Well, this is a tricky one, right? Like, how frowned upon is it? I think as a student, especially if I think about my own student life, I mean, I'm not gonna deny that I didn't really do anything of that stuff either. But like, as soon as I could afford for the programs that I was using on like a day-to-day basis, I made the switch, right? And that's also why my tool set is at this point like way smaller than it ever has been. Where let's have a look. That's also why I made the switch to Blender in the first place, right? Because Maya and Max were too expensive for me to pay, because it's slightly different, but I was doing commercial at that point. And then ZBrush I don't really use anymore because I just use Blender sculpting. ZBrush I never really bought, but I haven't used that in like ages. And whenever I had to use it, it was on like a studio license. So that's also like a different part of the question, right? But in general, yeah, it's a good question. How frowned upon is it? I wouldn't say it's really frowned upon as students. I think that's where I would draw the line. If anyone thinks about it differently, feel free to chime in. But yeah, most of these companies, most of these programs have educational licenses attached to them, which usually are free if you can prove that you're a student, right? So this is the case for, I think it's Maya and Max Indie now, because that recently changed, that you can get like an educational license. Yeah, I think so. And usually they get offered through the school as well, right? So, I mean, yeah. Well, if you're not attached to a school, that's also like a different part of the question too. I think this is more of a thing where people are gonna do it anyway if they don't have the money, right? I don't think there's like, if there is no free educational license available, and if you're not a part of a school, then at some point I think you're gonna be taking a step into like finding a way to still learn it without having to pay for it, right? Does it matter? Yeah, like it does matter. Because you're basically costing like the company you're basically costing the company income, right? For something that they spent like years of R&D and like years of development into. It's like where do we draw the line? Right? Because this turns into like an interesting conversation about like when is it quote unquote okay to pirate stuff? And there's this weird thing that happens that, say you pirate stuff that I did, like for example my Unreal Engine marketplace stuff. If you pirate that, people tend to be really sympathetic compared to if you were to pirate Maya or Max, right? There's like a difference between the two because one is a large business and the other one is like an individual. But it's kind of weird, right? Because like a business is such like a collective of people that work really hard on their products as well. So yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. Like if you don't have the means, which obviously it's not cheap to like get into these programs, I would say at this point it's probably more achievable than it ever was. I mean, if you want to do 3D, just pick a Blender. Blender is free. And if you wanna pick up like texturing, and if you don't have any money, right? If you don't want to pay for Substance, there is something called Armor Paint, I think. And I think that is free, or might be like way cheaper than Substance is. Let's have a look. Let's have a quick look, right? Yeah, Armor Paint is free. 3D painting software, node-based. Yeah, so you can use that. Quixel Mixer is free, but I think that's a good point, Bikes. But I think Quixel Mixer is more to just mix pre-existing stuff, right? Whereas Armor Paint is more to create stuff from scratch, which is still more valuable in like an environment artist toolkit than Mixer is in that case. But yeah, that's a good point though. Like Quixel Mixer, is it free? Isn't it part of the Quixel suite? I'm actually not sure. Quixel Mixer. Oh no, you're right. Download for free. That's also a good one to try out. That's something that I haven't tried out yet, like Quixel Mixer actually. Might be interesting. But yeah, I think at this point, I don't think there's really an excuse to pirate stuff. Like if you're starting from scratch, right? If you're starting today as an environment artist or like just like a 3D artist, like there's no excuse to go pirate stuff because the stuff that is out there that is free is often as good or better than the paid stuff, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. So yeah. And then, I mean, this usually brings up like the next topic, right? So say you learn Blender, say you're like a pro in Armor Paint or whatever, and then you have to get a job in the industry. That's usually where people are like, oh, but you learn Blender, but Blender isn't industry standard yet. I honestly don't think that a lot of companies care that much about it, because the technical switching from one toolkit to another is usually way simpler than all the art foundations and like all the insight into composition and lighting and all that stuff that you had to learn along the way which takes way longer than just switching from the tools, right? In this case, it's switching from a hammer to a saw. Like, yeah, it takes some getting used to, but you know the basics. You know how to model. You know how to create shapes. The buttons are going to be in different locations. But yeah, maybe the company doesn't want to invest into having people make the switch, right? It depends on how good your skill level is compared to your technical understanding. Because say for the sake of an example, like you are a mediocre artist that knows Blender and Armor Paint compared to a mediocre artist that knows Max and Substance Painter. They will probably go for number 2, right? Because they already know the tools, and the skill set when it comes to like the actual work that they're producing is comparable. There's never gonna be like 100% comparison, but let's just imagine that is the case, right? Then they will obviously go for the person that already knows the tools compared to the person that still needs to learn them, because for them it's a business, right? So they don't have to spend that much time and money investing in you. Because the big thing is if they need to train you, and as a junior that's always going to be the case, so there's nothing bad about it. But that is going to take up time from other people in the team. Where if you have an intermediate or a senior helping you out, that is also costing the development time from that person too, right? So it's not only costing them money for you to be trained up, but it's also costing them development time for the other person that invests their time into training you up. So it's like a double or a triple investment that they're doing, because then they also get paid more and all that stuff, right? Purely business talk. When I mentioned this, by the way. Yeah, I mean, how frowned upon is it? Like, if you go back to the core of the question, I don't think it's really frowned upon. Like, why? What? I think the question is more like, why would you ever mention that you torrented anyway? Right? If you just don't mention it. And if you say that, look, I have experience in Max, the company doesn't really go ahead and is like, they aren't going to be like, oh, but did you like buy it or was it illegally downloaded? That's never a question. Because once you get into the studio, they will have the software for you anyway. So they don't have to care about the legalities anymore, because it's all taken care of from their side. So at that point, it's more about if you can do the work. So yeah, like if we go back to the core of the question, how frowned upon is it? It's probably not. If we really think about it that way. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. It's an interesting question for sure. All right, and that being said, that's it for the questions that we had from the people in the Patreon, the community. Thank you so much, everyone, for asking these questions. Now, let's turn to the chat. Are there any questions? Anything at all? It can be literally anything, really. Feel free to just ask away. Bum, bum. Yeah, I'm also thinking about, as long as it's for educational purposes and not commercial use, doesn't matter. Came at the right time. Hell yeah. Yeah, we need questions, Raj. Come on. Come up with some. Quick. Yeah, we just talked about how frowned upon it is to torrent programs, like 3D programs. Pretty interesting topic. You know that's dangerous. No, do it. Do it. I don't think you ever asked like a dangerous question up until this point. I don't think so. LFD underscore Piero, thank you so much for the question. Do you need to know CAD as a 3D artist for interiors? That's a good question. That's a really good question. I'm not sure. I don't think so. Because here I'm a game environment artist, right? So I'm not an architectural visualization artist. So there are different programs that we use between branches, right? Like between different what are they called? Like professions, let's call them that. But I don't think so. My understanding for CAD is that it's more about mechanical stuff. Yeah, industries. Exactly. That's a good word. So my understanding is that CAD is more for mechanical stuff. Like if it needs to be accurate, that's when you go to CAD, because you can really be like super accurate with like measurements and all that kind of stuff, right? So I would say, do you need to know CAD as a 3D artist for interiors? No. If we look at Unreal Engine, for example, and if that is your end goal to present interiors into, which I don't know if it is, right? But I've been keeping an eye on the movement that's happening like over the years, and like Unreal Engine is more and more becoming the thing that is being used for like real-time presentations. But yeah, at that point, it doesn't really matter what you model it in. So it could be Blender, it could be Maya, it could be Max, it could be CAD too. If that is a program that you're comfortable with, it could be 100% CAD too. Like that is actually interesting question. Because yeah, I don't know too much about a different industry, right? I'm not as up to date as I am with games, but that is my assumption, that you can technically use any program that you want. There might be, like there are in games, right? There might be the standard programs that you use if you want to have the highest possible rate to getting into the industry. But I think that is shifting a little bit with programs like Blender. So yeah, I mean, I answered that in a roundabout way, so I'm sorry about that, but yeah, that's probably the best that I can do as a person not knowing too much about that industry. You've been trying to learn CAD as a weapon artist? Oh, interesting. How has it been, Bikes? Isn't it like, well, this is my assumption, right? Like, isn't it like more unwieldy than some other programs, because they have that whole like accuracy thing going on? Hey, Boggle the Hoggle, how's it going? How are you doing, buddy? Raj, thanks so much for the question, man. What are your thoughts on feedbacking people who don't implement it? That is a very good question. Let's have a look. I'm gonna add these into the list as well. Let's have a look, right? Because Piero has like an additional thing. So let's dive into that first before we dive into your question, Raj. The thing is, I'm a Max user and I would love to work in interiors, and I have over a year of experience at a 3D job and a bachelor's degree in media engineering, and I still don't find a job in that industry. Well, yeah, it can take some time, honestly. I did like 4 years of education, and I was really lucky that I got an internship straight away. But I've heard the same thing from other people too. The industry, like both games and like into like architectural visualization, are becoming super accessible, right? Like the programs that you need to get in are becoming super accessible for people. So I think that's a part of the issue here. It's also highly dependent on your personal skill set and how good the work is that you're putting out, right? And then also to add on to that, even if you have good work, you need to be reaching out constantly and sending emails constantly to like all the positions that you can find, basically. And this is not to say that you're not doing that, right? But there's like a lot of factors that come into play here. But yeah, I would say in that case, just keep up with it. I think if you're already doing like a 3D job and you have a bachelor's degree in media engineering, I think you're definitely on the right track. So keep it up. A lot of this stuff is more about persistency and just like keeping at it than it is about, you know, like short-term gains, right? It's consistency over time. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So you got this. Wish you the best of luck. Let's have a look here. Raj, what are your thoughts on feedbacking people who don't implement it? You give and give, but they don't use any of it. At some point, should you even continue feedbacking? Yeah, that is a really interesting question. How I did that with people that I would give feedback free to, right? Because this is also a difference if you get paid for it or not. It sounds really silly, but like it's up to them if they pay for it, right? Because it creates this what is it? This financial incentive, where if you don't have the financial incentive into play at all, it becomes a different thing, because then you are just freely giving your time, which I did with a lot of people too, even before I did these mentorships, and I'm still doing like the free feedback sessions now, right? Well, it's more in private now, but I do get where you're coming from with this. Because there are just people that are never gonna implement the suggestions that you give. What I would say in that case, what I always did is I would give them 3 chances. And yeah, you kind of have to be really careful here, right? Because sometimes the feedback that you give might change it in their mind to something that they don't want to do, if that makes sense. So you're like suggesting things that take away from the original idea that they had. So that's also something that you need to keep in mind. But if you're just the easiest feedback that you can sort of iterate on in this manner, or that you can really see if they just want to get your opinion on it and then just ignore it, or if they really want to listen to you, is the technical stuff. So if you say, I don't know, it can be simple stuff, right? Like this thing that you're building is just way too high poly. And if they say like, oh, okay, I'll fix it for next time, for sure. And then the next time you look at it and they didn't fix it, then you can bring it up again. And then if they don't do it again, I would just be like, look, if you don't want to implement anything that I say, even when it comes to the technical stuff, then why are we doing this? Because I personally also think that there are a lot of people that just want to get your opinion about stuff because they just want to have your eyeballs on it, right? So they just think about it in a way as like weird networking, if that makes sense. And I've definitely had people like that where they just send you like a quick message like, hey, can you look at my latest piece? It would be nice to have some feedback. And then I usually sit down and send them, I really think about it for like a half an hour, right? And I thoughtfully construct like things that I want to say compared to the things like just blurting it out, right? I construct it in a way where they can put it into like an actionable plan. And then the next time they get back to me and they're like, oh, that was great. I did an update here and it didn't really look at any of the changes that you think. And it's just like, wait, what? Like, you're just taking the piss, right? Like, you're just doing this to get eyeballs on your work. Yeah, I was gonna say that. I was gonna bring that up too, because that is valid, right? Like, if they don't want to redo it, or if they have like sunken cost fallacy that you bring up here, then they should say that. But usually you can tell. So it's like a two-way street, right? So as an artist giving feedback and an artist with experience, you can usually tell where they put their time into. And I will take that into account as I give feedback. So I'm like, imagine they have like a hero statue in the middle of their sea. And it looks awesome, but it can just, like, there's some stuff that needs to be done about that. But you need to bring that in a way that it doesn't destroy or invalidate all the work that they've done so far, right? Because that's really important, because you wanna keep that artistic motivation intact. So if for example in this case, I say like, look, this statue is looking freaking amazing. I see that you have put a lot of time into this, but if we do like a little bit of tweaks here, we can elevate it to like a new level and really make it shine as like the hero piece of this scene. That is sort of, if you deconstruct that feedback that I just gave, it's like you're validating all the work that they put in and then adding your own stuff to it, which is not too difficult to implement, but will get you the most bang for your buck, right? Because it's not about, you have to be careful that you're not just putting your own spin on it, or that you're imposing your artistic vision. You have to build on the artistic vision that they've set out, which is really important. Let's have a look here. Leon, yeah, thanks for the feedback. I think it's valuable, but I'm not sure if I want to implement it because redoing it would really demotivate me. Maybe your advice for the next time that I'm working on. But asking and then responding is a bit rude. Yes, exactly. If there is a conversation that happens, usually that tells me that the artist is invested. If they just say like, okay, thanks for the feedback, there's nothing happening. It might be a case where they're really happy with the feedback and they're going to implement it all, or they might do the opposite and just throw it away, right? Because I've had so many like interactions with people like that, where it's just it's a little bit too easy to get cynical about it, if that makes sense. Where there are legit people that are looking for like good feedback out there. But yeah, it is a tricky thing, but I would definitely give them like a couple of tries. And yeah, always try to give them feedback where it matters. I think that's also super important. As a person who gives feedback, you should be able to give feedback where where it matters. This is also when I give feedback in the community chat, for example. I'm not saying everything that I see. I'm seeing the things that can be changed quite easily to have the biggest impact on the stuff that's currently on display. Because it doesn't really matter if like some texture is wrong, or like some what is another example, or if some silhouette from some asset is like a little bit wonky. Like, that doesn't matter. It's about the bigger picture, right? It's about what you're trying to show off and like what the focus is about. Because it's also a skill that you need to learn, giving feedback. Like, it's something that you have to like properly think about, like invest some time in, and also just like really nail it down to like what's more important. I can understand you're in a position where you get asked more than other people, than most other artists do. Well, this is kind of interesting, right? I think well, this is where it gets interesting, because I'm thinking about this a lot. Where I think people perceive me as too busy, so they won't reach out to me anymore. I barely get people reaching out to me at this point, apart from the mentorships, right? Where it was a little bit different before, but it's quite interesting that people don't do that anymore. Sometimes I do get people that reach out to me on Twitter, for example, in like a Twitter message, but I would say that's once like every couple of months, I'd say. And then usually it's quite unfortunate, because those people, they just say like, hey, here's my latest work, can I have feedback? It's like, wait, where's the backstory? Where's the, hey, how are you? I'm a student in this. I've been working on this for a couple of months. Can you please have a look at this and tell me how I can improve like the modeling? Right? It's, I don't know. It's kind of weird how some people just like assume that you're ready to help them. Like, artists are really giving in that way, but at least have like the decency of just like introducing, giving a little bit of a backstory, and like putting time into that message, right? I think knowing that there are mentorship puts you in a mindset of, oh yeah, that is true too. But I don't think I what is it? I don't think I market my mentorships enough for that, honestly. It definitely plays a part though. Like, if you go to the Patreon and then you see that there is like a mentorship tier, that might impact if you're gonna have, or if you're gonna if you're gonna ask for feedback. So it might be a part. That's a fair point. But yeah, it's a really good question, Raj. I've definitely been in positions where I had to do like the 3-step thing, where I'm like, especially with people that, oh wait, let's have a look. I think you nailed it there with the answer, to be honest. I know sometimes some people feedback and they're like, oh, do this, but then it involves going back to sculpting phase and going through the whole process again, when you pretty much call the prop finished. And at that point, you just gotta keep in mind of what. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's super important to keep that in mind, because imagine how demotivating it is. Like, exactly like you say, like, I'm going back to my hero statue example, right? In the middle of the scene. Imagine if they spent like a couple of weeks working on that, and it could look better, but like a lot of stuff could always look better. But then if you say like, look, I would honestly go back from scratch and maybe start from like a 3D model that you get from a museum or something like that, right? And then add your own spin to it. Imagine how demotivating that is. Like, they're not gonna implement that. Fuck that. And that's also, if you give feedback like that, you have to do it in a way where it's like, look, I wouldn't do this now, But for the next one, I would think about like rethinking the workflow that you used here. Maybe it could be better if you, I don't know, in this case, start from like a 3D scan, or if you start from this or that, right? It can be anything. But yeah, I was just gonna say that don't let it demotivate you. Like the people that try to, I think abuse is the wrong word, but like just try to use you to get like some extra eyeballs on their work. I would not let that get to you. I would just give them like 3 strikes, and the third time I would just be like, look, I'm gonna invest my time anywhere else. Like, if you don't want to implement at least one thing that I'm saying, or if you don't get back to me, then I'm not gonna invest my time in this. Because there's so many amazing people out there. Like, and I've seen so many of them over the years where I'm like, we have discussions, right? Because, like I said before, like sometimes you give feedback to a person and they're like, oh, but I didn't really imagine this working with the art style that I'm going for, or I don't want to do that because the story is this and this. And then it's like, okay, no, good point. So maybe then we can turn it into this. But from that point on, it becomes a collaboration instead of just like a one-way street, right? You want to have that conversation with that person and like help them get to the next level. And you got to do that together. It's not like, look, you need to do this and then it's going to be good. It needs to be like a two-way street. Because it's also going to help them develop the skills and like the way you see things, and maybe they can learn from like, okay, I shouldn't approach this from like a technical perspective, but from like a storytelling perspective, which I've seen over the years too. And I've been a victim of that myself, because that is always the interesting thing. Like, that is usually the first thing that I ask people showing me their work. It's like, okay, cool, what's the story behind this? And honestly, in a lot of cases, it's like, I don't know. I guess there's like this thing that happens that caused this. It's like, nah. It just tells you that they didn't really think about that. A bit off tangent there, but yeah, it's an interesting topic, man. It really is. And I have had to say to people that I'm not gonna waste my time on this anymore. So thanks for the follow. In between all this stuff, there's actually a pretty interesting comparison that I made, or like a pretty interesting, not a comparison, but like a situation that I was put in, because one of my friends at the company that I currently work for, he's also from Belgium, also from the same school. We were both at one point mentoring the same person. And I was getting to a point where I was like, look, this person is not really listening, is not really taking the input. And we didn't know that we were both giving him like feedback, right? So at some point, I think it was mentioned that the other person was giving like feedback too. So we got together and then we discussed like how the person took on feedback. And I was already at a point where I was like, look, I'm not gonna talk to that person anymore, because not implementing, not getting back to me, like I had the feeling that it was just yeah, just there to show off, but then not really implementing stuff, right? And then we kind of followed up. Like, I didn't really follow up, but they published some blog posts, and it was just getting out of control. Like the environment was never going to be finished. I think at the end they switched to something completely different, right? So I think it was more a case of just a person that really wanted to do stuff that he just wanted to do, and then wanted people to validate that. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely people like that out there too, which I think it's also a part of like the natural progression as an artist, right? Because that is the thing that you want to do. You put your love into it, and this is like your thing. And then you have like some external what is it, like some external person coming in and saying like, I would do it like this, I would change this and this. It oftentimes get too personal, where you have to be able to objectify it. To be honest, I usually give them a few strikes, but also working more with what they already have in composition and lighting. Yeah. I honestly think that's important. Give them like a few strikes and also be open with them, right? Nothing to add to this conversation. I'm just enjoying listening to this great wisdom. Thank you so much. But yeah, it's an interesting topic, especially going through, I mean, dozens of people over like the years, right? Usually this comes back to like an earlier topic. Like, I don't know, like a couple of AMAs ago, someone asked like, how do you know? Can you tell if a person is gonna make it into the industry or not? And usually from like the first conversation, I already make my judgment, which has always, well, not always. There are times when that completely panned out wrong, right? Like my assumptions were totally wrong. But usually there are people that you just know from the beginning that are like, okay, we'll give them a chance, but you don't really start off on like the wrong, like on the right feeling. But yeah, it's interesting. I thoroughly enjoy taking my time and giving people feedback. But there are just people that are going to squander that opportunity, I think. Yeah, giving them like a few strikes is really good. Do you have a lot of people reaching out to you, Raj? Or like how? Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter that much, but like how many people are you currently talking to? Let's have a look here. Just going to go through the chat a little bit. We have quite a few people in here today. So I'm just going to reiterate this, right? This is just like an AMA session. You can ask me anything that you want about environment art, the games industry, how it is to work in it, personal work, portfolios, like feedback. Like, just feel free to ask anything, really. I'm all up for it. Do you take commissions at your point in your career? I've never done commissions. The thing that I do though is I sell Unreal Engine Marketplace assets, right? So that's probably the closest that I get to commissions, even though I'm not directly selling it to one person. It's more like a marketplace thing. We also have well, if we're talking about like commercial stuff that I'm doing on the side, right? Like Beyondextent is a big part of that, where it's just like a community for environment artists. But yeah, not really anything like commissions or anything like that. I tried to dabble with freelance work at some point, and I got like an offer for like a couple of projects, but it never really spoke to me, there wasn't really that much interest in it. Because I was kind of thinking about some point like switching to freelance completely. But yeah, once I got like the first couple of offers in, I was like, not really something interesting happened there. So is it okay to ask another question? Yes, for sure. Feel free to ask as much questions as you want. Now, we have a uni chat, and me and a friend usually give feedback on it, but none of it really gets implemented, and you don't end up seeing much improvement in each work in progress. Oh, so it's like multiple people that you give feedback to then. Huh. I wonder why that is. Because it's such a unique opportunity, right? To, as a student in university, talk to an industry professional and get professional feedback that you can directly implement in your environment. Right? That would be I mean, that would be such an opportunity for me. Like if I imagine being in school and the only stuff that you get to hear is from your teachers, and then like an industry professional comes by to give you whatever, like career advice, portfolio advice, work in progress advice. Why wouldn't you just take that with both hands and like try to implement it as best as possible? Such a missed opportunity. But yeah, I would be it would be interesting in having a look at the feedback and like the discourse that happens there. Can I ask questions about Beyondextent? Oh yeah, for sure. Anything goes. I mean, to give an example, in these AMA sessions, we talked about food. We had like in-depth discussions about water at some point. I mean, we talk about a bunch of random stuff here. Usually, I would say 80% of it is professional, maybe even more, but I mean, you can ask anything. Can be personal as well, if there's something that you really want to ask. Hydrate. Thanks, Raj. Do you... Raj, on that last topic, do you do these live, or is it all in text? Piero comes in with another question. So if you want to improve your portfolio and you want to work in a special field, would it still be okay to work on different stuff and put it in? For example, interior, but then you have characters or fun assets in there. That's a good question. I would probably keep that out of your portfolio, to be honest. I would maybe think about maybe like a personalized website or something where you can put that on so that you still have access whenever you need to access it, right? But I would have like a separation between like, look, this is a job that I want, and this is like the fun stuff that I do on the side. Especially when talking about different specializations like that, where let's take myself for an example, right? Like even when I'm doing personal work, it's always going to be environments, so they kind of match together. But let's say if I were to do characters, it would be like a totally different question, because that's like a totally different field. So yeah, that's the way that I would approach it, to be honest. I mean, here's the thing, right? This is always the question with your portfolio. It depends so much on what you want to show from yourself. Whereas yeah, what was I gonna say? Like, Because some people thread this line of the personal and professional, right? And they kind of blur them together a little bit, which works for some people and some companies. But sometimes you then diminish your chances with companies that are looking for like purely professional artists, if that makes sense. So let's say, in this case, in your example, right, you have some amazing interior examples, and then you have like some characters that probably don't look to the same level, because that's not what you want to focus on, right? So that's fine if they're not the same level. But it can kind of go both ways. It's like, oh, they dabble with characters, but it can also be like, their character work is not that good, even if it's not relevant to the stuff that they're doing. Because yeah, it's a tricky one. I would probably keep them separated for that reason, so that you don't cause any confusion between the two. I think it could be interesting if you put them on, let's say if we're talking about ArtStation, right? You have like a clean portfolio, but then you do like updates on the fun stuff that you're doing on the side in like blog posts. So that if you imagine being yourself a recruiter, you go into your ArtStation, it looks all nice and clean. And then if you're really interested in what your day-to-day life is, and that you're experimenting with other stuff, you can go to the blog. But then there's like this clear separation of like, look, this is my professional work, and this is the stuff that I do on the side. I think that could be an interesting one. So I'm making music. Would Beyondextent be a good place to find background artists for my YouTube uploads? I don't think so, honestly. I don't think so. Because it's also a community that's focused on helping other environment artists out. I mean, the work that some people produce is stunning, but it's not really focused on like anything commercial like that. Because most of the artists that are currently in the community, they want to be game environment artists, right? And usually the stuff that you find on like background art on YouTube uploads is it's a different genre, I think. Yeah, no worries, no worries. I try to be as honest and transparent as I can be. How is that going? How is making music videos and YouTube uploads? Oh, trying to make music for games. Oh wait, hold on. I think I misunderstood then. Oh, okay. So you want to be like a game audio designer, or well, that's maybe a wrong word. Like a composer for video game. That might be different. That might be... Hold on, let me... Doo-doo-doo. Is there a way? Oh man, I don't think currently. It would be nice to have like a display of like community showcase things, like I'm kind of doing in the beginning of these streams. Yeah, send me a private message or something. I can maybe reach out to a couple people, see if they want to get involved with that. Raj, a bit of both. Me and a friend had a conversation about this yesterday, how someone we knew and feedback posted a work in progress a year later. And none of our feedback was in there and was pretty much just a slight different angle of what they were working on with no new changes. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna get that too, right? I think that's where we get back to the topic of just people that are not really ready to put the work in. Because there's still this weird little stigma that happens when we talk about universities for games, right? Like, oh, it's just playing games the entire time, so that's going to be fun. I think some people are still confused when it comes to that. Focusing mostly in composing for fantasy/RPG style games, and it's been a little bit difficult getting replies from artists. Yeah. Yeah, I can get why. I think we're really finicky with our art and like really protective about it too. Where should I PM you? You can probably do that on Twitter. So send me a message there. Yeah, my Twitter should be in the chat. Hold on, let me just quickly. Whoop. Doo -doo -doo. Here we go. Took way longer than it needed to. Yeah. All right. Yeah, going back to your thing, like Raj, it's weird, right? Because yeah, it's just a little bit weird that some people don't really want to put the time in. Yeah. I mean, but it's up to them too, right? And if they only post a work in progress every year, then you're not putting too much time into feedbacking it either. So that's a good thing. Yeah, it's interesting talking about feedbacking people, and some people that will make it or some people that won't make it, and like you can kind of feel it unless they change over time. Which honestly, look, I was a lazy son of a bitch as well, like in art school. I mean, I basically dropped down to like the easiest thing you could do in like high school, and I still doubled years and all that stuff. So I'm not gonna preach about laziness. And like I changed a little bit over the years too, so maybe they're just going through the same moment in time, right? They just have their lazy period, and then maybe they'll evolve after that. But that's interesting. Maybe this is just like an open question on stream, so no pressure, right? Do you want to do that more? Like give feedback to people? Because I've been thinking about something. Would be interesting to get some more people involved. Yeah, it is a little bit of a shame that you just don't see them implementing the stuff that you say. But yeah, that's life. PM on Twitter. Thank you so much. I'll check it out after the stream. Yeah. Yeah, but that is a really interesting topic, because I've had some infuriating talks with people about that too, where I've been going through the same motions of like, oh my god, why aren't they listening? Like, I'm because you're literally trying to do the best for them, right? But yeah, some people are just a little bit more appreciative than others, and some people are better at giving feedback than others too. I'm pretty sure that I gave some shitty feedback in the beginning too. All right, cool. We got some really good questions in the chat today. I've seen a few peeps who decided to call it quits and trying to find a gig in the industry, and you can see that them trying. Oh, you can see them trying, but need a bit more of a push to make their work better. And I just feel like, yo, here's the thing you can do to push your work. But just something I've been thinking about doing. Yeah. Oh, dude, we should hop into the voice channel like after this chat, because I got an idea for that I want to discuss with other people too and get other people involved in. So well, if you're thinking about that stuff anyway, it might be nice to just do it. But oh man, that brings up such a good point, right? Like I've also seen people like on Twitter or whatever, like ArtStation, and you're just like, man, this is such a great piece, but if they just did this, it would be so much better. But you're not gonna go there and like you're not gonna go there and like smash the door in and be like, hey, look, this is what you need to do to make your stuff better. I mean, that's not really the thing you should do, right? But sometimes I think I did that like a couple of times when I like just asking permission to give them feedback. Because, oh my god, imagine if you just say like, look, there's one thing that really bothers me about your art, and that's this, and here's how you can improve it. Imagine. Imagine. Watch Coco and help you push your shit. Okay, I guess we're not doing it then. It's been a while since you brought anything up about Coco, man. Giving feedback is fun, but I think some people just ask feedback for validation. Yeah, I think so too. And then they get really bummed out if you don't give that validation. Because, I mean, you ask for feedback, right? And if you ask for feedback, I'm gonna give it. Still in a constructive way, mind you, but yeah, it is kind of weird, right? When talking about feedback, I've also said this thing where you have to get used to asking feedback and like how you ask it. Because yeah, sometimes people get confused where it's like, look, can you give me feedback on my entire art? And then you give them feedback on their entire art and they get really demotivated. Where you can kind of shield yourself from that too and say, look, I'm struggling with lighting. Can you give me some lighting specific tips? And that way you kind of compartmentalize the quote unquote damage that you're doing. Wait, what is happening? Is he getting featured? I've never heard about that channel though. Doo-doo-doo. Kill Ashley, thanks for the follow. Brutal name though. Don't kill Ashley. One of my friends who's a character artist. Wait, is this the channel that we're talking about, or is that just like related to the topic? Someone reached out to him and asked if he wanted to push his work, and he kind of took him under his wing and helped him push. Helped him push his work, and now he's a character artist working full time. Oh yeah. Yeah, welcome to the chat, actually. I think, no, that was just my confusion. I think there was something random going on in chat and I couldn't keep up anymore. No, it's all good. It's all good. I'm just interested. I'm like, an art channel? I need to find out. Yeah, it's such... Oh, man. That's actually something that I want to do, like, once this all... Well, this COVID shit dies down. Is maybe try and go to schools and, like, give feedback sessions or something like that. It would be kind of interesting. I've never done, like, a feedback session or, like a talk or anything like that. This could be interesting. I've been a part of, like, recruitment sessions, like, what are they called? Internship days, where people are looking for an internship and all that, but where people have to present their portfolio and, like, kind of, I don't know, I kind of make them defend their portfolio, because then you really get to the truth of what they made, right? So that stuff was super interesting. I totally enjoy that, even though in the beginning, look, this is a secret, right? But even though in the beginning I'm stressing out too. Like, it's so weird to say this, but the first, well, I've done this 2 times now, like, for the same school, where you go into what is it, like, you go into a room and there's, like, a ton of people waiting for you. In this case, you're representing Ubisoft Berlin, and then you just see the anxiety in their eyes and be like, oh my god, what are they gonna say? And then I'm sitting there as well, like, as the only environment artist, like, with, like, a massive line of environment artists just waiting for that one opportunity, right? And then at the end of the day, having to pick between all the portfolios. Jesus, not easy. Especially with the high caliber of portfolios that are coming out. It's insane. It's insane, the stuff that's coming out of schools these days. Well, most schools, right? Like, especially the school that I'm coming from, like, Digital Arts and Entertainment in Belgium. Like, they are putting out some good students. My eventual goal is to help someone out like that, but also same. I want to do that at some point too, going for a session at a school or something. Sounds interesting. I think we should talk about this more then. Love your cute robots. Yeah. Roger's robots are really cute. We need more of them though. Raj, we need more. Also, how are you doing, Ashley? I forgot to ask you that question in the beginning. More on the way. Hell yeah. Yeah, you're pretty busy. Don't ever stop. Pretty good. Awesome. Raj, maybe we can turn him into emotes. For the server. Da da da. We should. Yeah, I think we should. I mean, we have 95 slots left, so I think it's gonna be a while before you fill those up. But I think we should, man. I think we should. I think we definitely should. All right. I got you. Oh shit, he's gonna go on it immediately. Give us Pepe emotes. Ah. Don't really want to do the Pepe emotes. I don't like him. I think if you got them from another server, you can use them anyway. Fair enough. Look, this is the thing. You're basically talking to like an old man here, right? Like I'm not up to date with all the memes and all the emotes and all that jazz. And if I'm updated by someone else, usually I don't like it. So you're looking at a 60-year-old in a 28-year-old's outfit, basically. Like, look, if you give me the choice between Raj's cute robots or some Pepe emotes, and the choice is made. Yeah. Have some cuteness rules all. Oh no. I don't wanna overhype it. Cute Pepe robots. Maybe. Maybe. I'm not sure. It can be really nice. Or oh god, no. Don't corrupt Raj. Raj, don't make Pepe robots. Anyway, I'm gonna do my spiel again, right? Like, we got probably some new people here. This is just like an AMA chat that I do every Sunday. So a welcome if you're new. If you have any questions about like game development, environment art, portfolio work, anything really, like personal about me, like how the game industry works, what kind of food I like, it's all good. Feel free to ask anything. What kind of games that I'm playing, or what I do in my free time. It's probably a boring question. I'll consider it. Let me just take that and put it into my idea bag, also known as my trash bags. Oh no! You probably got so many cute robot ideas in there. It's a shame, man. Do you know any good game music composers? I like Inon Zur. He works for, well, the stuff that I like him for is it's stuff that he did for Fallout 4. There are some really other good ones, but I can't really recall any names. I think Inon Zur also did the soundtrack for Outriders, actually. Although that didn't really speak to me as much. Oh, do you know any? Oh, sorry. yeah, I just personally know Inon Zur, right? Do I know any game music composers? Well, from fuck, just going through the same motions. Well, apart from the people that make the music for the games that I work on, not really. But yeah, it's difficult, right? Because they're where does the barrier between composer and, I don't know, what are they technically called? Audio designer, sound designer? Because usually composers are more like freelance, right? They provide the actual music, where the sound designers usually take the music that they get or that they compose and Yeah, and then cut it up to make like the game music, right? Just wondering how connected you get. Honestly, with sound, not that connected. Yeah, overall, not that connected at all, to be honest. Usually, they just work on the stuff in isolation, right? I think they talk to like the team that's responsible for the realization part or like art direction. They talk to them, but like as a environment artist, we don't really talk to them that much. That's with the audio department, right? Like we are like super interlinked with other departments. For example, I mean, level design we're really close to because we work hand in hand. And then concept art we're really connected to as well. A lot of back and forth bouncing of ideas. Kind of connected to the small peeps we hire because small indie studios, so everyone gets an input. Yeah, I would assume so. That the smaller the studio is, the more connected everyone is. Because that's also the big difference with like a studio like Ubisoft, right? We have people all over the place, so we might have people doing the audio in like a completely different time zone or like a completely different region of the world. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So the small indie culture, more embedded with like all the different disciplines. That's pretty good. I've never really worked for like a small indie studio myself, so it's hard for me to say, right? The smallest, well, quote unquote smallest that I worked for is my first job at Frontier Developments. And that was over 100 people, I think. In total, right? So I think when we were working on Planet Coaster, for example, the environment art team was roughly 8 people, I think. But I do, well, let's see if I can quickly find it. Because there is a good friend of mine, and she's working. She is an environment artist, but she also does sound stuff on the side, which is really good. Jumping straight into the big leagues? What do you mean? Shit. Don't know if I can quickly find her. I mean, this is the thing, right? Like, the Frontier that is known now was not the Frontier that I joined. Like, it's completely different. Yeah. Jumping straight into the big leagues. Wait, Reddit? No, it's not what I wanted. Oh. Wasn't expecting that autoplay. I can't really find her SoundCloud for some reason. That's annoying. Oh, didn't I think I linked it in the community chat? Let me just quickly look it up. Yeah, that scared me. Oh, there we go. Is it gonna autoplay too? No? Okay. Here we go. So that is like a fellow environment artist who is now doing stuff for games, which is super awesome. But she's doing that just on the side. So environment artist by day, sound designer by, well, composer by night, I would say. Let's have a look. He's swapping from AAA to indie because he missed the whole small team aspect of it. Yeah, I can get that. I can really empathize with that. That's also what I loved about this studio, because when I joined Ubisoft Berlin, so if we talk about like this studio by itself, right? It was a studio that was 40 people in the beginning when I joined, and now we're way over 150. I'm not sure. But it's grown crazy. But I can get that. Like there's something to that small atmosphere, right? Where you can really get to know everyone, and there's like a really intimate bond between everyone. It's still there. Obviously with everyone working from home, it's completely different. So there's definitely like a loss when it comes to that aspect of it, because you don't have that face-to-face connection. But like I would love to say that it's still quite interlinked. I do miss all the rooftop parties and all that stuff. Well, quote unquote parties was more like after work drinks. Yeah, it's good, right? She's doing some good shit. I think that's what she wants to go for. Like she really wants to dive into that completely. So I'll need to share it a bit more too. Because she's also doing like she's doing a soundtrack for the game that I just sent, right? But she's also doing soundtracks for like another game that someone at our studio is making, and she's doing the soundtrack for that too. So it's nice. All right. I think it's about time that I bugger off. We've been going for 2 hours. I want to do some personal work too. And I apparently need to chat about some stuff with Raj here. So yeah, I'm going to leave it here today. I want to thank you all so much for your really good questions and the really good discussions in the chat. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'll be here every Sunday. Same time, same place. If you want to ask questions, if you just want to chill out, hang out, talk about some random stuff, I'll be here. I hope you will be too. So for everyone, I wish you a nice Sunday, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.